All right, so we are digging into the Gospel of Sri RamaKrishna. We're on the chapter called Dakshineshwar, and oops, there we go. The master was talking to Naranjan, and Naranjan or Adar made the mistake of praising somebody who was quite worldly, and the master the master told him to keep quiet and don't torment me anymore. And so we're going to start today. We're going to talk about signs of a real devotee. And all right, so signs of a real devotee. There is an ocean of difference between a real, all renouncing devotee of God and a householder devotee. A real sannyasi, a real devotee who has renounced the world, is like a bee. The bee will not light on anything but a flower, it will not drink anything but honey. But a devotee leading the worldly life is like a fly. The fly sits on a festering sore as well as on a sweet. One moment he enjoys a spiritual mood, and the next moment he's beside himself with the pleasure of lust and greed. Right? And so this notion of what are your refuges, in your life? Where do you go for your sense of fulfillment, for your sense of enjoyment? You know, when you're lonely, what's your solution? When you're angry, what's your solution? When you uh, just need anything, what is your solution? Right? Because the divine ideal is that we find our solution within ourselves. We come to know our nature and realize that the needs of body and mind are not our own, that there is a contentment that sits behind body mind that's ever present and always full for us. And so to know this as a spiritual seeker, to actually be able to find the shrine of the heart in your practice and to access it in a stillness and in a silence which allows you to come to know yourself beyond words, simply by being what you are, rather than having the mind try and describe it to you, because that's the problem. We always go to our mind to learn something or to know something. And this practice, this coming to the knowledge of ourselves, is something that we can't go to mind for. It's something that reveals itself, literally reveals itself, in the deep silence of being. When you've stopped paying attention to mind with the realization that it has nothing to do with you. When you pull your mind from memories and thoughts about the senses of the body, when you remove that and come to your inner silence, that inner shrine of the heart, the holy of holies of the temple of the body, that in that space, in that quiet, you will come to a knowing of your nature. And it will come to you as a knowing. You will not be able to describe it. You will not be able to say it because it does not fit in the mind at all. It cannot fit into the rules of language. And so he's comparing that the sannyasin, who knows of this place and goes there for all of his desires, goes there for all of his comfort and for all of his refuge. If he's stressed out, if he's angry, if he's too busy, he always finds solace in that inner shrine, that inner space. And so they call him a bee because he only goes to the sweet nectar of the flower, right? And then those of us who are struggling along, leading householder lives, the difference is that when we're lonely, we'll go off to the movies. When we need some entertainment, we'll call a couple of friends and go out to dinner somewhere. Like that. We have a bouquet of refuges that we can take. In this world, rather than going immediately to the shrine and finding solace in the divine. And it's not a big fault. Most of us have no idea what's inside. We don't know. We see religion and we see religious people and we sort of see that as the way things are. Not often do we get to meet an enlightened person or a seer or an advanced practitioner who lives in a very different world from us, And that is how we get a taste for it. You know, we find that senior Swami somewhere that has that beautiful glint in their eye, you know, that sweetness in the way that they speak with you, and the sincerity that's evident that pours out. And we then begin to think, wow, there must be something to this. There must be a possibility here. And so we go searching inside and find that. He goes on and says, a devotee who has really and truly renounced all for God is like the chatak bird. Now, the chatak bird is this, it's a mythological bird that lives high up in the sky and only drinks water when the star Saraswati is in the ascendant or something like that. Anyway, unless all of those conditions are met, it refuses to drink any water. So he says he's like the chatak bird. It will drink only the rainwater that falls when the star Swati is in the ascendant. It will rather die of thirst than touch any other water, though all around there may lie 7 oceans and rivers full to the brim with water. And all renouncing devotee will not touch lust and greed. He will not keep lust and greed near him, lest he should feel attached. All right, so this is the difference. It's for us, you know, for those of us who are really wanting to try and find this inner shrine, trying to touch our inner nature like that we will shun those things that distract us, those things that give us pleasures in other ways. We'll run from them because they pull the mind out of the shrine, and it makes it very difficult to find your way back again. That identity, that attachment to the senses, to the body, to the mind, is so strong that you really, you'd like to think, oh, I can dabble and pull back, and it's not a problem for me. No, 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 no. You can't have the vision of God and the pleasures of the senses simultaneously. That's two different kingdoms. One is up here in the mind, where you're living as the thought of yourself without an idea of what you are. And the other is in the shrine of the heart, in that silence, that inner silence, your refuge. And you can't be in both places. You either have to be the thought of yourself or you have to be one of the two. In being, there's no thought, no calculation. There's simply spontaneous existence where the self, Satchitananda, your divine nature, is what is responding to the moment. When you live up here, you're not responding to the moment. You're trying to change the moment by bringing in your desires or bringing in your adjustments or making it the way that you want it to be. And you live in thought, right? In this world up here, when you're talking to someone, you're not really listening to them. You're listening to them sort of to hear them and understand what they're saying, but you're only doing that long enough to form a response. And once you know how you're going to respond, you basically just sit there and wait for them to finish so that you can talk. Right? And so that's why they call it unconscious living, you know. When we live in the senses and the mind, we're always lost in thought, always analyzing, always calculating, always censoring, always, all kinds of things. And we don't, we're not free, right? We're not free. We make all kinds of assumptions, right? Somebody says something and we think we detect a tone in their voice. We think, oh my God, they don't like me. They get mad at me all the time and blah, blah, blah. And you're off running and you realize, that they had only burped in mid-sentence and meant nothing by it. And you created this whole long scenario of how they didn't like you and why they didn't like you and the history of them not liking you. And then all the other people that treated you that way in kindergarten that marked you for life. And now you can't. And on and on and on it goes. This is worldly living. This is living in the world and trying to look for your fulfillment through worldly things, through things of the senses. Trying to find your satisfaction in pleasures of the body, pleasures of the mind. And, that's fine. Mother placed all those things there. And in the beginning of spiritual life, you should try those things out if you feel like they really are the answer, but you do it with full awareness so that you can see the true nature of those enjoyments. So you can see that they don't last. You can see that they don't give you what you asked for. You see that they do lead you into habitual, unmindful living, right? Where you just keep going out and doing the same things over and over and over again, looking for more fulfillment, but only getting a little splash, and then having to pay the price for that over and over and over again. So he's saying that a real devotee who has truly renounced all for God doesn't go anywhere else, finds all of his solace in the shrine, all of his solace in the presence, right? And, a lot of us think like, oh God, I have to go to the shrine all for all that. That seems so boring. you know? But hold your judgments on those until you touch the live wire that is the presence, the love of God within you, and know that it's worthy as a refuge for all things. It doesn't go away. It doesn't leave you. It sets you in a contentment with life. And just the name of the beloved, after a while, after some practice, just the name in your mind opens that door and gives you an immediate access to this inner shrine. And you'll start going there more often, or even in the middle of your busy day, get in the elevator at work, and while you're standing there, suddenly the name appears in the mind, and you feel all that stress and all that anxiety of the moment from what you were thinking about and worried about. Take a back step and fall away for a moment, and you just feel your muscles relax in response. And you come into the shrine until you get to the first floor. And then you pick your anxiety back up and step out into the lobby, and off you go. Right? Adar. But Chaitanya, too, he enjoyed the world, right? So he takes Chaitanya, who's another incarnation of God, and Adar is saying he enjoyed the world, right? He's looking for a little wiggle room. Master, amazed. What? What did he enjoy in the world? Adar, scholarship, honor. Master, it was honor in the sight of others, but it was nothing to him. Whether you, a deputy magistrate, or this youngster Naranjan honors me, it's all the same to me. And I tell you this truthfully, the idea of controlling a wealthy man never enters my mind. Surendra once said rather condescendingly that Rakal's father could sue me for letting Rakal stay with me. When I heard this from Manomohan, I said, "Who is this Surendra? How does he dare make a remark like that? He keeps a carpet and pillow here and gives me some money. Is that his excuse for daring to make such an impudent remark?" Adar, I understand that he gives 10 rupees a month. Isn't that so? The master, that covers 2 months' expenses. The devotees stay here and he gives the money for their service. It is he who earns the merit. What is that to me? Is it for my personal gain that I love Narendra and Rakal and the others? M. Your love for them is like a mother's for her children. Master, but even behind the mother's love lies her hope that the children will support her later on. But I love these youngsters because I see in them Narayana himself. These are not mere words. Listen, he says to Adar, there is no scarcity of moths when the lamp is lighted. When God is realized, he himself provides everything for his devotee. He sees that they do not lack anything. When God is enshrined in the heart, many people come forward to offer their services. Once a young sannyasi went to a householder to beg his food. He had lived as a monk from his very birth. He knew nothing of worldly matters. A young daughter of a householder came out to give him some alms. He turned to her mother and said, "Mother, has this girl abscesses on her chest?" The mother said, "No, my child. God has given her breasts to nurse her child when she becomes a mother." Thereupon the sannyasi said, "Then why should I worry about myself? Why should I beg for my food? He who has created me will certainly feed me." A beautiful, guileless, true assumption, but a daring assumption for somebody living in the world. But he saw that God has placed on the mother the means of nurturing and feeding the child. And he's amazed. He's like, well, if God did that to take care of the baby, certainly he'll take care of me, in my life. And with that kind of faith, you can know for a certain fact that God does indeed take care of us in every way. Every one of us is being fed by the beloved. Most of us think it's our job that's feeding us, that it's our company that we work for that's feeding us. But where did that come from? And how did it end up with you? It's all the divine doing, all the divine play. And if you have the faith, Mother will take the company away and still feed you, still give you money, still pay your rent, you know. And so this beautiful learning from watching closely, right? We talk a lot about this moment. My goodness. Sounds like we've got some military helicopter landing on the roof. Wow. Sorry about that. Can you hear that? Wow, you can't hear that. I can hardly hear myself. It's that, I'm not kidding. It's that loud, or was that loud. Now it's gone. All right. Now I've put an edit in there for myself to have to go find. All right. Why should I beg for my food? He who has created me will certainly feed me. Listen, if a woman renounces everything for her paramour, she can say to him, if need be, you wretch, I shall sit on your chest and devour you. Okay, that was unexpected. Nagda told me a certain king who gave a feast to the sadhus using plates and tumblers of gold. I noticed in the monasteries at Benares with what great respect the abbots were treated. Many wealthy up-country people stood before them with folded hands, ready to obey their command. But a true sadhu, a man who has really renounced everything, seeks neither a gold plate nor honor. God sees that he lacks nothing. God gives the devotee everything that is needed for realizing him. Right? That's another one of those things to sit and ruminate, sit and think about. It's God who gives you everything that you need in order to realize God. It's not for you to run around and do your realization.
Including suffering, Maharaj.
Including suffering, especially suffering. Oh, yes, how lucky you are if you're suffering. In that sense. Yes, suffering is when the growth happens. Why? Because when things are going well, we don't we just enjoy doing well. We don't think about, oh, why am I doing well? What should I should do more of this. We just enjoy doing well. But when we're not doing well, we start asking those questions. Why am I not doing well? What have I done? What do I need to do? Why is my life like this? How do I change? What can I fix? Right? And we go searching. So yes, suffering is a big part of spiritual life, right? That's why Mother put us in a world that has where all the blankets, I like to say, all the blankets are 6 inches too short, right? She's placed us in a world where all the blankets are 6 inches too short. And the wise ones will try one or two and say, hey, all the blankets are too short. And they'll go elsewhere, right? The worldly person is like, oh, let me try another one. And they try, and they try, and they try, and they try. This is when I pick on Elizabeth Taylor. Right. She went through one husband, then she went through a second one, and then she had the stamina to try again and went for a third one. And then stamina became, I don't know what it became, to come to the fourth and the fifth and the sixth. And God only knows what was motivating for the seventh and eighth. You would think at some point that you would understand the husband is not the thing. Your fulfillment has to come from within yourself. Pick as many husbands or wives as you want. That's not where it's going to work, because even then it comes to the end of life and you lose one another ultimately, right? So it's very important. The watchword of Vedanta is freedom. If you need anything outside of yourself for your contentment, you are a slave. You will have to work for it and pay for it and arrange it again and again and again and again every time you want that little taste of ice cream, you know? You'll have to come up with buying it over and over and over and over and over, nonstop. And that is exhausting. That's exhausting. I remember those days going to my cubicle every day, catching that subway ride, getting there, just over and over and over and over again, sitting in front of my little computer terminal all day long. Right. That actually wasn't that bad, but but it doesn't give you what you're looking for. That's the important thing to come to know and to take mercy on yourself, really. Take mercy on yourself and then answer your own mercy for yourself with the grace of the beloved. And give yourself permission to go inside, find something different, you know. God sees that he lacks nothing, right? You're an executive officer, he says to Adar. What shall I say to you? Do whatever you think best. I'm an illiterate person. Adar smiling to the devotees. Now he's examining me. Master smiling. Dispassion alone is good. Don't you see? I don't sign the receipt for my salary. God alone is real. Everything else is illusory. Right? So it's that knowledge that everything else is illusory. Now, what does he mean by that illusory? Right? We're like, well, how can it be illusory? I see it. It's a table. It's right here. But see, it's when you remove the boundary of time, this table's not always a table. This table was actually a tree. It's made of wood, right? And so there was one time when this table was not a table. It was a tree. And now it's a table. And there's going to come a time when it's not a table again, when it's firewood or it ends up in the dump for a while, right? And then it rots and becomes a mushroom. And so it hangs out as a mushroom for a while. And then some goat comes along and accidentally eats the mushroom. And now it's a dead goat, right? Sitting there. And again, round and round and round it goes. You see, so pay attention to life in its entirety. Don't let the because the trick of the mind, the trick of Maya, the trick of the mind is boundarying everything, putting blinders on you. So you look at that night out on Friday night and you only remember, the 45 minutes where things were funny and perfect and great and happy and whatnot. The point where you fell off the table dancing and hit your head on the shot glass and, bloodied your ear. You don't remember that part, right? And you wake up your Saturday morning, proverbial Saturday morning I always talk about, where you say, oh my God, I'm never going to do that again, right? And next Friday night, where are you? You're right out there doing it again. Why? Because the mind will only replay the best part. It will only play back the best part, right, for you. And you just think, oh, yeah, I really do want that. Yeah, 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 yeah. Right. So it'll play the best part. And then your memory will bring up all of the memories of all the friends and all the laughs and all the good times, which again are whittled down. It's like talking about Saturday Night Live. I remember when that show when I was younger. When you watched it, it was sort of funny. Not really, though. But to talk about it the next day was hilarious. Everybody would be talking about their favorite part of their favorite skit and the most funny thing. And it made it sound like it was the best show on the planet, right? And then you'd go watch an episode and you'd be there and you'd be like, wow, yeah, like 10% of this is hilarious. The other 90%, oof, right? And that's what the mind does with life. It makes it look way better. It makes it look like the enjoyment of the senses, the enjoyment of money, the enjoyment of the sexes and the mind. That's the way to go. And we spend our whole life trying to build that house and build that relationship and build that family and buy that car that's going to give us that fulfillment. And then we get older and everybody leaves the house and now you've got lots of time to think and you kind of start wondering, I got tricked. I got tricked, right? So dispassion. Dispassion is understanding that and not being pulled into it, right? It's you just understand, no, this is nothing there for me. I have found a better thing. I have found something that works. And so you are no longer interested in those things, right? Hazra entered the room and sat with the devotees on the floor. Hazra repeated now and then, Soham, Soham, I am he, I am he. We've all seen that person who comes to your meditation and is sitting there, chanting the names out loud every time somebody walks by them. All right. I am he, I'm he. So Hazra is sitting there and repeating out loud in Thakur's presence, nonetheless, I am he, I am he. To Latu and other devotees, he often said, what does one gain by worshiping God with offerings? That is merely giving him things that are his already. He has said that once to Narendra. The master spoke to him. Master, I explained to Latu who the object of the devotee's worship is. Hazra, the devotee really prays to his own self. Master, what you say is a very lofty thought, right? It's one of those things that's very easily said, but very, very rarely actually known, right? Not actually realized. What you say is a very lofty thought. The aim of spiritual discipline, of chanting God's name and glories, is to realize just that. A man attains everything when he discovers his true self in himself. The object of sadhana, of spiritual practice, is to realize that. That is also the purpose of assuming a human body. So it's why you're here, right? So the next time that you decide to cancel your meditation so that you can go out to coffee with Sally, don't do it. You're not here for a coffee with Sally. You're here for your meditation. Of course, we all find our balance in these things. I'm joking with that, but do think about it in that way. We very readily will move our life around to fit in our social endeavors, to fit in our friends and family. How often do we move our life around to fit in our practice, to fit in our chanting the names and glories of God, or to, sit and read or sit and meditate? And so watch your life carefully to see where you really are at, right? Because the ego always thinks that you're doing fine. The ego will always tell you how great you are and how well that's acceptable. That was just a small thing. Oh, that's not an important thing, right? Everything that comes up in your mind, you're like, oh, well, that's not often enough to worry about, right? And it probably isn't. We live in a world of grace, but we act out of love, you see. We act out of love. And when you serve yourself, you miss the opportunity of serving your beloved. And that may seem like just a bland statement, but it's a painful statement for someone who has touched the divine. It's a painful statement when we turn away and we grab things, for pleasure, that we leave the beloved for a moment.
So, excuse me, Swamiji, what do you mean by serve the Lord? Meaning,
Uh,
so
serving.
when we go and have fun, we are not with the Lord. But when we go to the shrine, when we, like you said, instead of looking for company, go to the shrine, right? So at that time, we are serving, we're chanting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you calling that the service, serving the Lord?
Yes, you're serving your divine nature by giving it command, by becoming and putting yourself in touch with it, reminding yourself of it. And it's not that if you go out with your friends, you're not with God. You can go out with friends that are also seekers, and it can also be a spiritual experience, right? And even the world itself, if you look at it one way, it's a den of delusion, right? But if you look at it properly, it's the very presence of your divine beloved. It's an expression of love for you from your divine beloved, right? And when you start seeing the world that way, then you know the meaning of life. And the most mundane things become rich with meaning, become deep in their feeling, in their effect on you. It's no longer just scooting along the top, trying to find one pleasure after another. You're actually finding pleasure that gives you wisdom, that gives you strength, that gives you depth, that gives you inner peace, that gives you solitude. a means of touching that doesn't go away. That's always present there within yourself, you know. I remember I'm telling my old stories again, but I talked to Swami about drugs way back when, you know, and asked him like about LSD and whatnot. I was like, is that valid experience? Like, what do you think of that? And if you remember my telling the story, I was quite surprised because he validated it. He says, yes, you can have spiritual experiences using some of these drugs. Yes, you can. He says, and yes, in some sense, they're valid. He says, but see, the ideal of Vedanta is freedom. And if you have to go to that drug to have your spiritual experience, you are in bondage. You are in slavery. You will have to continue to work in this world in order to come up with something to exchange for your means of your spiritual experience. So he says the watchword of Vedanta is freedom. And so, with knowing that, it is better to learn how to have those experiences without the external agent. You can have that bliss. You can touch the presence of God. You can see God within yourself if you do the work. You know, if you do the practice, if you accept the grace that's being offered to you, you can have that, right? But it always comes in proportion to your sincerity and your earnestness, right? So throw your sincerity and earnestness into your practice, and there will be no doubt about these things. A man attains everything when he discovers his true self in himself. The object of sadhana is to realize that. That is also the purpose of assuming a human body. One needs the clay mold as long as the gold image has not been cast. But when the image is made, the mold is thrown away. The body may be given up after the realization of God. God is not only inside us, he is both inside and outside. The Divine Mother showed me in the Kali temple that everything is Chinmaya, the embodiment of spirit, right? So this is how we begin to see the world. At first, it's practice, right? At first, we just practice by offering the flowers. Now, when we see flowers, we think of worship, right? And then you realize that you can worship flowers just by, or offer flowers to your divine beloved just by looking at them, seeing the beauty, but not digesting it yourself, but taking that beauty and without contemplating it yourself, handing it immediately to Mother. How beautiful, Mother. And you hand her a flower and leave it on the bush, right? And you walk through the garden offering all the flowers, appreciating the beauty in Mother's presence for her benefit, right? And we begin to live our life that way.
Mentally, not plucking them.
Yes, why
Yeah.
not? You can do it both ways. Yes. But that's the thing about this. One of the great things is that your whole life becomes that. You know, karma yoga done properly is you offering everything to God in the moment. Everything to God. That means while you're sitting there eating your roast beef, right? Your favorite food, you're sitting there eating, oh my God, that's delicious. And usually we just enjoy it ourselves, right? We steal it from the divine. We're robbing God in that sense. So what you do, you eat the same thing, you're like, oh, that's wonderful, Mother. Here, taste this, and not taking it into your own mind and enjoying it. Hand it to Mother. Taste it, but don't let yourself have a thought about it. Just hand it. Let Mother enjoy tasting with your tongue, right? So you offer things as you eat them. You eat them for the Mother, consciously doing that. It's a wonderful exercise. It's a wonderful exercise to do that and to begin living like that. You know, see one of the exercises I did for a long time to protect myself from from beauty being able to pull me out of myself, right? Lust and greed. Whenever I would see a beautiful person, I would always tell Mother, "Oh, Mother, you look wonderful in that outfit. You look wonderful dressed like that. You look wonderful with your hair like that." Right? And just go around complimenting Mother everywhere. Like, "Oh, Mother, you look beautiful. That's wonderful. You look so striking in those shoes." Right? Like that. And then you walk by beautiful things. You know, you go hiking in the mountains And instead of just taking it in, you sit there with mother and offer it to her like, my God, look at that, mother. How beautiful you've made that. Right? So everything becomes an impetus of divinity for you. Everything becomes something that places your mind back on your own divine nature, places you back in the shrine of your heart. And from that place, you watch the world and you learn how to enjoy the world, right? You enjoy it by offering it and the beauty of letting go and remaining free, not letting yourself get caught by anything.
Can I have the same interaction in conscious conversation with the divine with something that I have aversion?
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yes. The question was asked, can we do the same thing for things when we have an aversion toward them? You know, and actually, this is something, where was it? In Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. He talks about dealing with things that you are normally averse to. Like, I think of back when I was dealing with depression about a decade ago, and I would have that horrible dark feeling, inside. And normally I would just do anything to avoid it, just go anything to avoid it. And Eckhart Tolle's teaching and my therapist's teaching at the time, to be transparent, was to not resist it. Don't give it a story that explains it. Don't give it a narrative. Don't give it a name. Don't give it a label. And don't resist it. Feel it fully. Enter yourself completely into that pain, right? Let it flow over you because that will bring light there. Why? Because your presence is light. It is awareness. It is Sat Chit Ananda. And so by sitting in the presence of your pain and accepting it, letting it flow over you, you will find that it corrects itself because Sat Chit Ananda is self-correcting. When you resist, it persists. When you invite it in as a friend and experience it, you move through it and it takes its proper place in your psyche, right? So, like that. So, that's how we do aversion. It's the same thing. Go in there with the beloved. For me, I went into that space. I remember I told you guys that for me, the way I felt it, the way I experienced that depression when I would actually focus on it and see it is like this black, tarry, horrible thing with crushed glass mixed in with it. It was just a horrible thing that would sit there of physical pain in my chest. And I remember, talking to mother and just like I was diving in, I was like, okay, Ma, let's go, let's go. And I just kind of breathed and let it just really take over, which is hard to do because depression is hideous. It's hideous. I would let that just take over and just feel it deeply. And when it quieted down a little bit, I imagined a white shining flag that just had a bright beacon on it. And I picked it up in my mind's eye and I pushed it into the ground of my heart where I was standing in that pain. And I made the declaration, love will win here, right? Love will win here. And it took me about 8 years of practice and studying, but that depression went away through that practice. I put some classes together on it on the website if you're interested in it, but it worked. It took me about 8 years, but I was able to walk away from depression, from a sometimes crippling depression. So this notion of the benefits of spiritual life, I can attest to it. It can put you together. It can really help you.
Where do you have the classes, Maharaj? On Mankotronic?
I think they're on Monkotronic. Yes, there's. I think one of them is called "Dealing with Depression." But if you just search for depression, I think it's in there. If it's not, let me know, Bindu, because I can definitely get some up there.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you, Maharaj.
God is not only inside us; He is both inside and outside. The Divine Mother showed me the Kali Temple that everything is the embodiment of spirit, that it is she who has become all of this. The image, myself, the utensils of worship, the door sill, the marble floor, everything is indeed Chinmaya, right? This is very much akin to that practice I was sharing about where sitting on the bed in the morning, I remember I'm not in a material world. I'm living in the dream of God. I'm living in the mind of God. That everything here is made of that dream material, dream stuff, Brahman. And so I sit there and I just still do this in the morning. I sit there and I stroke I've got a real fuzzy bedspread that's all nice and soft. And I spread that and I greet Mother at the same time because I'm touching Mother directly, right? Because Mother is inside me and outside of me, everything. She has become all of this. And so for a moment, I place my mind in that awareness and I touch Mother with the awareness that I'm touching Mother. And I touch my bedspread with the same way that I would touch Holy Mother's shoulder if she was here, like she's my beloved, my friend, my mother, right? And touch that with that awareness and just kind of set myself for the day that I'm wandering through the mind of God today, right? The mind of the divine, and everything here is made of God alone. And so you let your love dictate how you touch things, how you sit, how you walk, how you eat, what you think of, how you greet people, how you answer the phone, right? Always knowing Mother has become all of this, all of this. The aim of prayer, the aim of spiritual discipline, the aim of chanting the name and glories of God is to realize just that. For that alone, a devotee loves God. These youngsters are on a lower level. They haven't yet reached a high spiritual state. They are following the path of bhakti, devotion. Please don't tell them such things as, I am He, right? So there's the four paths to God that we're familiar with, right? There's the path of knowledge, the path of action, the path of devotion, and the path of meditation or Raja Yoga. We've got those four paths. And so if you're practicing devotion, some of the Advaitic scriptures will make you feel silly, like, oh my God, why am I doing all of this when I am that, right? But the danger of that is if you are not ripe, if you still think that you are this body and this mind, then you say, I am that, you've done a very dangerous thing, because the I you're referencing is your egoistic I, your particular I, the I that says this body mind is me. And when you attach your ego to something as grand as the image of God, you become super egotistical. You become super entitled, right? And you walk around as if you're a God man, having yet not accomplished anything. But you fool your mind into thinking, but I'm already that. I don't have to do any of that. I don't have to do that practice. Because your mind, that's the first thing it wants you to do, is throw your practice out the window, because it knows that it's your practice that will be its death. Right? And so the ego will do anything possible to get you to stop practicing, tell you you don't need it, tell you you're farther along than you are, tell you that you're God's special little worker. All these little things. Oh yeah, God and I we've got a deal. He understands me, right? Unfortunately, I'm pulling all this stuff from my own experience. The things I've heard myself tell myself over the years, right? But anytime Ramakrishna talks about himself, what does he say? I'm the dust of the devotee's feet. I am nothing, right? And so he's just telling us here, if you're practicing the path of devotion, don't do the I am he. And if you're Gyani practicing the I am he, make sure that you're doing the yamas and niyamas, the do's and don'ts. Make sure that you've got a disciplined life. Make sure that you're not chasing after your sense experiences. Make sure that you're disciplining your desires and your tastes and your appetites. Because if you don't, and you continue to practice, if you are doing a lot of practice and you're not doing any of the yamas and niyamas, you will have mental trouble. I promise you. You will have some mental trouble because you've got your foot in two different boats, your feet in two different boats. And it may seem fine and fun at first, but after a while, when those boats get far enough apart in the directions that they're both going, you're going to be in a very uncomfortable situation. So that's why he's saying, like the mother bird brooding over her chicks, Sri Ramakrishna was alert to protect his devotees. Adhar and Niranjan went out on the porch to take refreshments. Presently they returned to the room. Adar, smiling. We talked about so many things, pointing to M, but he didn't utter a word. Master, in Keshav's organization, there was a young man with 4 university degrees. He laughed when he saw people arguing with me. He said to argue with him. How silly. I saw him again later on at one of Keshav's meetings, but then he did not have that same bright complexion. Sri Ramakrishna sat on the floor for his supper. It was a light meal of a little farina pudding and 1 or 2 luchis that had been offered in the Kali temple. M and Latu were in the room. The devotees had brought various sweets for the master. He touched the sandesh and asked Latu, "Who is the rascal that brought this?" He took it out of the cup and left it on the ground. He said to Latu and M, "I know all about him. He's immoral." Wow. Latu, shall I give you this sweet? Master, Kishori brought it. Latu, will it suit you? The master smiling, yes. M had received an English education, and Sri Ramakrishna said to him, "It is not possible for me to eat things offered by anyone and everyone. Do you believe this?" M, gradually I shall have to believe all of these things. Master, yes, that is so. After finishing the meal, Sri Ramakrishna washed his mouth and said to M, "Then will you give me the rupee to Naran?" "Yes," said M. "Certainly I will." The moon rose in the clear autumn sky and was reflected in the river. It was the ebb tide in the Ganges, and the river flowed south toward the sea. And we'll stop there for the day.